Very timely that we should be considering this subject today. Timely because the party at our conference last weekend launched a consultation session about devolution. Devolution is a subject that has been dear to the heart of my party, and I say that because it was the Liberal Party before the Liberal Democrats, and it's built into our basic DNA. So why are we having a consultation session about it, leading to a full policy report being presented to the autumn conference? It's because there's been a mismatch between our heart and our head. Our policy for many, many years, into the Liberal Party and into the Liberal Democrats, was to have strong regional devolved government with real powers, with tax-raising powers, with the opportunity to take from the mandarins of Westminster and the high hidjins of Parliament the authority to micromanage this community like every other community in the country. We lost our way 7 years ago, and we came up because we'd seen the appalling results in the one referendum that's taken place in England on this issue in the northeast. We lost our way, or perhaps we lost our nerve. We've come up with this pusillanimous policy at the moment. So if people really want a different way of doing things, then of course they can have it. But let me ask you this question. If you go down to the Dog and Duck, which I'm sure many of you do by the look of you, on a regular basis, and say, well, what do you think about the way we run government? What sort of decisions should we take at what level? How many people would actually respond in any way at all to that conversation, and how many of them would get on with their darts? Because the fact is that for most people, how we run government is absolutely irrelevant. What they want to know is, what does that mean for them on their street, in their school, in their hospital, in any subject that they're particularly interested in. So the question itself has become irrelevant, and it's become irrelevant at a time when the government is marching on, and the Liberal Democrats have been coming up with entirely different solutions in different parts of the country to how to deal with this relentless pressure to have elected mayors, to have combined authorities, and to have a level, fairly minimal level, of devolution. Now let me say from the start that different decisions about how that should take place doesn't bother me at all. Why would we have in Cumbria exactly the same system of governance as we have in the Liverpool City region? I'm not bothered if Cumbria, with their particular problems, their sparsity of population, for example, come to one conclusion and we come to another. But what we're trying to do inside the Commission, and which I think is the most important thing of all, is try to decide what should be done at which level, because that's the key to it. It's not to say we have a system and we will make everything fit into the system. We have to say, where is it appropriate to take decisions about particular issues, and then, when we've done that, build a governance system that will work for us, our communities, and our regions. And that's why the Commission, chaired by Tim Pixton, Gordon Lishman's on it, I'm on it, there are a few Southerners as well, but I'm trying to make sure that their opinion isn't heard too much, because one of the problems is that too many decisions are made by people in London and the South East, is meeting. But we won't just consider devolution to a region. We also need to consider what powers should come back to local government. And there's no one in the Liberal Democrats who's ever disagreed with that statement. But the key killer for many councillors for this discussion is we'll also be asking the question, what should be devolved from councils to communities? And I must say, when I was the leader of the party in local government for 8 years. And we had a lot of councils we controlled at that time. And I would go to councillors and say, of course, our policy is to devolve, it's to involve, it's to take the power out to people. And they say, I'm not sure that they can manage, you know. They're ordinary people. Well, I must tell you, I'm an ordinary person. That's who councillors are, that's who MPs are. We're all ordinary people. And actually, there are very few people who, if they were given the right opportunity, wouldn't want to do more to take part in the decision-making for their street, their neighbourhood, their community, their part of Liverpool, and their service. So I want to make sure we come up through the Commission with policies that do something and a commitment from us to actually deliver it. So that's what we'd like to see, but what have we got? Well, let me just give you some figures. The northwest region of England is bigger in population terms and GDP terms than Scotland. Scotland, of course, has its own parliament and lawmaking sessions. People would say, but Northwest isn't as coherent as Scotland. Well, you talk to someone in the Highlands and the Islands about being governed by Edinburgh. It's not all that much different than me talking about being governed by Westminster. So yes, of course there are key differences between us. In fact, one wonders if we had the old system, whether the Cumbria and Carlisle ought to be part of the North East. That's actually more logical for many of its big services than coming to Manchester or Liverpool. But in general terms, we are as coherent as Scotland. If you put the Liverpool City region and the Manchester City region together, we have a bigger population and GDP than Wales, which has its own parliament, its own legislation and its own fiscal responsibilities. We have very little power. I'll come back to that. And if we just look at the Liverpool City region, Liverpool City region has 1.7 million people living in it, and it's actually the same size as Northern Ireland, with a bigger and stronger GDP. And in theory, I admit it is a theory now, they have their own parliament, their own legislative powers, and we don't. And let's face it, if Liverpool and Manchester people could come together over this, I see no reason why Protestants and Catholics couldn't. Oh, no, perhaps it is a bit more complicated. But what we've got now is a totally incoherent system. Best known in the Northwest region because we've got two regional mayors. A regional mayor for Manchester, Andy Burnham, the Right Honourable Andy Burnham. Obviously got fed up with Jeremy Corbyn and thought he was getting an easier job. And in Liverpool we've got Steve Rotherham, who was actually Jeremy Corbyn's permanent private secretary, and decided that he'd done enough for Jeremy Corbyn as well, and decided to take an easier job. But the reason it's an easier job is that in some ways they haven't got many powers anyway. They haven't got the powers that certainly we would demand for them. Manchester is a lot stronger system than we have here in Greater Liverpool. It has the health service, it has the police combined within it, a lot more authority. And that's, of course, one of the problems. You talk about a metro mayor, and immediately you find that Liverpool is doing things one way and Manchester another. Well, that's all right, Richard. You could say, you said you wanted different ways to happen in different areas, but it's happening differently for the wrong reasons. It's happening differently, not because there was any understanding of what could be done region by region. It's being done differently because some bugger in London decided that's how it would be done. So they've got few powers, but they could do a damn sight better than they are doing. My view is that they should be the regional prime ministers. They should be spending a third of their time outside their region, going and talking to people, inward investors, the EU, who will still be important to us, bullying local, national government, creating partnerships to make our city regions work. And all they do It's had fairly tame little meetings in London. They have a plethora of working groups, task groups, joint groups, and mostly about things over which they have absolutely no control. So a disappointing system and a disappointing pair of people doing it. So I'd just like to conclude with some thoughts on where we should go and where I would want our Commission to go. Firstly, I want us to go back to what's been our policy for the whole, or most of the time I've been in this party. And that policy, to reiterate, is strong, devolved, regional government with fiscal powers that can take the largest number of decisions which are currently made in London. There was nothing wrong with that policy except our own timidity. So let's restate the principle. Well, we've got to do it in the right way. Let's go back to the dog and duck. Always a good idea, in my view. Let's go back there and talk, imagine that conversation. Let us not say, do you want devolution? What do you think about the structures of government? What if you go to the dog and duck and say, do you think too many people in London make decisions about this community? Then you have a fundamentally different conversation, because there are very few people up here who wouldn't say, yes, that's absolutely right. So that's the conversation that we need to have. But we haven't got that, so what are we going to do? Well, our job is to make the current system work better, partly by exposing how bad it is. Oh, right, I finished. You should. Good choice. Someone said once you're a bit like Ken Dodd, but I don't intend to follow his example quite this way. So I was coming to a conclusion. Gave me an excuse for a couple more jokes there. So I want to go back to what we're doing with city regions. We've got to challenge it. We're delighted, actually, with some of the things that Steve Rotherham is doing here in the Liverpool City region, because what he announced he was going to do after 6 months was mostly from Carl Cashman's manifesto rather than ours. And lastly, my challenge to all of you who are councillors now is to start challenging your council about devolving power. Who should run parks? Who should run libraries? Who should run on a day-to-day basis a whole range of services? I believe the people are better at running it than we are, no matter how good we are and how important we are in the town hall. So I've run out of time. You'll have to go without the last 6 jokes. Mr. Chairman, I hope you found that useful, interesting, and at least I've woken you up. Thank you.